Welcome to episode 146 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all of the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So, we figured today we could talk about, Christmas events. In this book, obviously the events are, paparazzi style bullshit. But, do you have any favorite things that you do over Christmas that, outdoorsy things?
No.
No?
I'm an indoor cat. I stay indoors. If I had to pick, obviously, so I enjoy the act of sledding. I don't enjoy the act of pulling the sled back up the hill.
Yes.
But I enjoy the act of sledding.
Yeah.
As an adult, I do tend to like to have a bonfire and sit next to it, even in the snow, right? There's something about it, especially so my neighbor always builds a skating rink, and so the kids skate on the rink and we all sit by the fire, and that's really nice, and I enjoy that.
Yeah. There's going to go see lights and stuff too, people.
I love going for a drive and seeing all of the Christmas lights for sure. It's the most magical part.
Yeah. There's one on the way downtown that is a mermaid, which is my favorite light up thing I've ever seen.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I love it. I'll have to get a picture sometime. I always almost miss it.
Yeah, I'm not outdoorsy, and I feel like maybe that's been established at some point. So outdoor sport things are not really my jam, and I'm always cold. So going outside in the snow.
Yeah, you're more like Hex in this book.
Yeah. I'm definitely feeling hexy. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. If I would pick anything over skating.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I can't skate to save my life. The skates hurt my feet. It's just a really unpleasant time. I also remember, I feel like I've had not a traumatic event. It wasn't that serious. But my high school / university boyfriend broke up with me the night after skating was our last date.
Yeah.
And then he broke up with me. And he wouldn't skate with me.
Yeah.
I was skating with my cousin the whole time. He invited me to go skating and he wouldn't skate with me. So I knew something was weird.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm just also projecting the fact that we broke up on to skating, even though it doesn't matter, but you know what I mean? It's just one of those things. So
associated it with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
So God only knows how, if, I don't know. But yeah, no, I'll pick anything over skating.
Yeah.
What about you?
I'm not a good skater. I will go and immediately my feet will hurt and I'll be like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
I haven't been sledding in ages. I can't even remember the last time. So I remember liking it as a kid though, having your little GT and going down the hill. We fat bike in the winter.
I don't know what that means.
It's a bike with really fat tires.
Okay.
And you go over snow in the woods. It's pretty fun.
Is it? What if you fall?
The snow was pretty soft. It's better than falling in the summer.
But then you're wet and cold.
Yeah, well, usually it's snowing here, so you're going to be wet and cold anyway.
I guess.
But yeah, I guess I don't really do a whole lot. I like to be inside and read.
We don't have any polar plunges or anything, do we?
Some people do them. I did it one year on, I've done it more than 1 year, but on New Year's Day, there was a group that did one here one time. And then like me and my family will do them on New Year's Day if it's not too wavy at Middle Cove.
Ew.
Yeah. So I would, but that's a New Year's Day thing. That's not really like I wouldn't do that regularly in the winter.
Well, that's like I keep seeing these TikTok videos of these, like, maybe it's just the one person, but I also see it frequently and see it in different iterations. So it's either somebody doing it regularly or it's several people. But like they have this big, huge, like, iron tub outside, and there's like frozen water, and the top layer is frozen, and the person is like in a bathing suit, like beating at the ice to like make a hole so that they can sit in the tub, and it's outside. And then there's a little 2-year-old with a little Tupperware tub doing the same thing. And I'm like, what is that? Why
are you doing this?
Yeah,
no, that's
and like
fair.
the last one I saw, I call her Mrs., but the girl literally had her hands like on either side of this big old tub and was standing on the ice. Like, that's how strong it was. It could hold her up. That's how frozen. She literally had to go get a brick to like bang through the ice so that she could get in this tub.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, no. Why do that to yourself?
It's like a common thing now, I think, that people are like...
It is?
Yeah. People say it's really good for you. And I'm like, I don't know.
I disagree.
I think it's fun to just like jump into the ocean on New Year's Day and be like, that's a thing I did. But I don't think I'd want to do it often. But people say it's good for their mental health. So whatever gets you through the winter.
I guess.
Like,
fine.
No judgment here. It's all hard.
Well, life is hard.
It's true. I just got one of those smart lights that like blast the like happy lights they're called. And like you put it on you so that it feels like you're getting some sun in the middle of winter.
You know, I gotta say that's not something that I suffer from at all.
No?
Seasonal affective disorder? No.
Well, you live in a good place for it.
I know, that's like, so my classroom, I have an interior classroom with no windows. Mm-hmm. Everyone's like, oh, no windows, eh? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine.
Didn't even notice.
Yeah, like I don't need the windows. Everyone sort of thinks I'm crazy, but like, yeah, I don't get affected by the sun thing.
Oh, I do.
Maybe it's just because I'm always been sun deprived, because I always like to stay inside anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll get started. So just a heads up, this is not a spoiler-free zone, and things might get saucy. They get like complete 180 this week.
That's good.
So last week we met our main characters, the princes of Christmas, Nick and Chris, the princess of Easter, Iris, and the prince of Halloween, Hex. So Nick is like the screw up of the family, and he screws up, and then his dad concocts a scheme to have him marry one of his besties, Iris, but they don't want to get married to each other because they don't feel that way about each other. And then Halloween gets angry, and they're like, we need to have a horse in this race. So they send in Prince Hex. The only issue is, turns out Prince Hex was a makeout buddy of Nick from a couple years ago. Nick thought he'd never see him again, and that he was just some bartender, but no, he was the Prince of Halloween. And Nick also has had this crisis going on in his brain for the past 2 years that he initiated the makeout session with this stranger. And at the end of last week's episode, we get the dun 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 moment that no, he did not initiate. Hex did.
Wild.
Yes. I feel like that's it, like, in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Santa Claus is a douche.
Yeah.
Is the other thing. So this week we are reading, it is week 2, and we're reading chapter 6 to 11. So, like, we're picking up almost right, like, the next morning, I guess. So, Nick is still spiraling over this idea that Hex kissed him. And, like, this kiss was, like, the best thing that he's ever experienced in his life. Like, yeah. I don't understand what has happened to him. He's, like, devolving into, like, I don't even know what. He's just, he's so, like, all in a tizzy. Mm-hmm. And, like, he didn't sleep the whole night because he was thinking about it. So he goes to the kitchen the next morning for breakfast, and, like, he's got this cute exchange between him and the cook, and he finds out that she used to puree spinach in his pancakes, and he's like gobsmacked. Like, he's like, like, his sensibilities are wounded.
Yeah.
So he takes a tray of food to Iris's room as an apology for everything. Like, for, like, not rescuing her earlier the night before from Hex. And, like, the whole situation they're in. So, like, he just wanted to apologize for, like, everything in general. Mm-hmm. So he sits down and they talk. And she starts to give him, like, a manicure because he, like, said his nails look like trash, and so she's like, I'll do it. And then he apologizes for using her mother in the argument that he started with her dad yesterday. I guess in the argument he said that, like, you're literally selling your daughter off to an arranged marriage, but, like, you married for love. Like, how do you think her mother would feel?
Yeah.
So he's apologizing for that, thinking that it was insensitive.
Well, also because, like, she was only 10 when her mom passed away, too. Like, it's pretty presumptuous of this random person who's never really been close with her when her mother was alive to say something like that.
Yeah.
So I understand why he's apologizing.
Yeah, like, you don't know her. You don't know how she would feel.
But, yeah.
Anyway, she just says, like, yeah, but it everything is true. Mm-hmm. And she said if my mom was alive, she would be livid at this situation. Yeah. But then she also says that, like, her dad has really changed since her mom died.
Fair.
And she just sort of says, like, he's become more susceptible to suggestions, mm-hmm. both from his own court and from Nick's dad. And that, like, she's saying, like, she's been trying to help him ever since her mom died, but, like, it never feels like enough. And that he just keeps telling her over and over again that like, Easter needs her. And in her head, she's like, I know Easter needs me, but, like, that's all her dad will say. Mm-hmm. And, like, Nick asks her what she wants to do when she graduates. And she's like, what do you mean? Like, I'm doing it. And he's like, no. If nothing else existed, what would you want to do? So then she hauls out this egg. And it's an Easter decoration. And it's, like, really vibrant and intricate. And there's, like, layers and layers and layers of color. And apparently it's called a cruslice, I think.
Makes sense.
Oh, okay, yeah. So they're like so actually there's a town called Kraslice in the Czech Republic.
Man, we're learning so much geography information in this podcast because of this book.
But, like, they are quite intricate if you look at the pictures. Mm. They're very, very intricately done eggs. So apparently they take, like, hours and hours to do. And Iris just tells Nick that, like, she wants to bring Easter back to making stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And, like, Easter has become really cheap with, like, ease and speed being the priority. And she wants to bring tradition back into Easter. So Nick just tells her that he understands, which she doesn't believe, which I sort of didn't like. But, like, I guess I find that, like, I'm surprised that both of them are so invested and interested in their holidays, if that makes sense. Like, he's like, if you could do anything in the world, what would you want to do? And she's like, I want to bring Easter back to what it was. And it's like, you don't want to be an artist or go paint or, like, you know what I mean? It's just like you're choosing.
Because like, I think even last week they said that she wanted to go to art school.
Yeah.
So, like, that would make sense. Yeah, it's, I don't know. I guess, like, they've accepted their calling as being prince and princess. But
I guess.
I agree.
Anyway, I also just, I don't like the reaction. He's like, oh, I know how you feel. And she's like, do you?
Yeah.
And it's like,
he doesn't care about anything.
But, like, at the same time, she's one of his best friends. You would think they would have had at least a moment of sincerity in the, 13 years they've been friends. Enough for her to recognize when he's being sincere. Yeah. Maybe?
Yeah. It just seems like he's never, like, the whole, I don't know, the whole shtick of it is that he's never been sincere before in his entire life. And it's like, I don't think that makes any sense.
No. Anyway, he explains to her that they studied, like, Christmas history and how all the different noble families were created based on the different pockets of joy created by the different cultural touches of Christmas that combine to create each variation on the tradition, right? Like, so some of the things that we do here are different than some things that other people do in other countries, and all those different things combine to make the different traditions. However, he says, like, now his dad is, like, focusing on one variation that fits one type of person, and, like, sort of the mass commercialized version of Christmas. So he's even saying, like, Christmas is not what it used to be.
Isn't that in a song or something?
I don't know, is it?
Oh, is it the Mummers song?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
So Iris sort of agrees and thinks that they could be all doing so much more, but their dads only care about expansion. So it's sort of, I feel like, a setup for, like, when we're in charge.
Yeah.
So Nick sort of gives another example of, like, how terrible Christmas is, I guess. His school friends, like, none of them want to go home and deal with, like, family arguments and all the shopping. And he thinks to himself that that's the feeling that his dad has, like, continued to exploit, we'll say.
Yeah.
He also feels that, like, even if they did try and fix it, he's like, this is his spiral. He's like, even if we did fix it and tried to make Christmas meaningful again, would it actually do anything to make any lives better?
Yeah, which is kind of what you were talking about last week of, like, it's not just about that.
Yeah, but he has, like, an existential crisis every 5 minutes.
Yeah. Which is funny because they're like, you can't take him seriously. And he's, like, spiraling all the time.
Yes. Iris is like, we do make people happy. But Nick's just like, it doesn't make a difference. Because in his mind, happiness only lasts for a day. And that, wouldn't it be better if they took all their money, as in, wouldn't it be better for him to take all of the Claus money and donate it to all, like, a bunch of charities?
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, wouldn't that be more meaningful to do that? But, like, he's already a part of some charities.
Yeah.
So he wants to do more and more and more.
Yeah, I also feel like it's kind of the concept of, like, happiness is just a feeling. Like, you can't, like, nobody is always happy. That's just not sustainable. So, like, I kind of feel like he doesn't grasp that fact, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. He's just, like, he's wrong. I just feel like he needs to be told that he's wrong. Anyway, he does still say that, like, even the very little we give to charity is still doing more good than all the cheap shit that we're peddling across the world. Which, again, like, I don't know, dude, take a trip to the toy room. Like, if you're concerned, then do something about it.
Yeah.
So Iris is, like, super shocked because she hadn't heard him talk like that before. And, like, I guess be serious before. And she just said that, like, even though she did have to switch classes, she does enjoy what she's doing. So it's not that bad. So she finishes the manicure, and I guess Nick wasn't even paying attention. But she looks down, and she painted his nails black and orange.
Love it.
Which is hilarious. And she realizes that, like, because he's like, oh my god, you have to take this off, take this off, take this off. And she's like, oh my god, you like him. And he's like, he's just begging her to, like, help him. Because I guess in his mind, they're still rivals for Iris's hand.
Yeah,
so
well, at least they have to play it.
Well, so I guess he doesn't want anyone saying anything about the fingernails. So he really tries really hard to, like he begs her to, like, help him stay away from Hex. Because he just feels like he can't jeopardize his holiday, and he can't jeopardize Easter as either, like, for this business proposal.
Yeah, because she's like, if it jeopardizes Easter, nobody will take my dad seriously.
Yeah.
So he's actually, it seems like he's more worried about her than he is about his own shit, because he's like, my reputation's already trash.
Yeah. So then he tries to make a joke about Hex vying for her hand, and I didn't understand this little bit at all, because she's just like, I don't want to joke about it. I'm not ready to joke about it. And in my head, I'm just like, what? Yeah. I just didn't get it.
I think the point is to show, and it only because he kind of has a realization later in my part, but I think the point is to be like, he needs to make a joke to make himself feel better. He's not worried about what she needs in this moment. But, yeah.
Anyway, so she just says, like, I'm not ready to joke about it. Please, like, just don't. And he just is sort of shocked. I don't understand how this conversation, like, I don't understand how they're friends.
I know. I guess, like, maybe they just don't see each other ever, and he's like, she's one of my best friends, but then it's like, they only see each other, like, twice a year.
Yeah, because, like, she's like, don't joke about it, I'm not ready. And he's like, oh my god, how did she know that I was gonna do that? And she's like, that is how you do everything. Like, you joke about everything. So, like, it's just funny to me that he's like, how did she know? It's like, dude, you're transparent as fuck.
You're very predictable.
Anyway, so then he genuinely apologizes again, thinking that, like, the fact that he jokes about everything is the reason she doesn't tell him things. And I'm like, oh, maybe.
Like, it could be the fact that you're not a serious person who's gonna take her problem seriously. You're just gonna make a joke about him.
Yeah. Anyway, so they finish eating breakfast together and they discuss today's event. Like, there's an event every day, I guess. 12 Days Christmas.
Feels like it.
And it's reindeer racing. And Iris is just going to watch this time. She's not going to participate. And I guess this goes back to, like, her having an accident last year or something. But I'm secretly like, why can't the princess participate if she wants to?
Yeah. It's
like,
hard because, like,
I hope it's a her choice, not a, oh, you got hurt last year, so you can't do it this year.
Oh, true. Yes. It does. I feel like it's a her choice. But my thing is, like, I find it hard in books because I always want the women to be, like, super badass, do everything. But then I'm also like, I'd rather stay inside and read. So, like, how can I blame them for not wanting to do it?
Yeah, I get it. So there's a time jump then to the reindeer races. So the winner apparently gets gloating rights and a trophy. So not very much. But
I guess they don't need anything though.
Well,
like,
no,
they have
you're right.
magic.
You're right. But, like, it's mostly just for the press and the photos and all that. So,
well, that's every fucking event they're doing. But this is,
oh, it's wild.
Ugh. Yeah.
But, like, they all have to be, like, styled and they're all dolled up. So they head outside and Iris and her dad and Hex are, like, set up in a standing tent, it seems like. And, like, Nick just, like, looks at Hex and is like, ooh, boy, hot today. But it's, like, hot, like, with a W.
I like it.
But then he gets real jealous because he sees Hex pull out, like, a bouquet of dead flowers for Iris. And I'm just like, dead flowers, dude?
Know your audience.
Yeah.
But I guess that's like they would never work.
Yeah.
But I'd appreciate it as the person
if they're already dead, then you can't kill them.
It's so true.
So he has to, so, like, Nick, like, is watching this and has to remind himself not to do anything. And he's like, I don't like Hex. I don't like Hex. I don't like Hex. And I'm like, dude, you're obsessed with this guy. Like, yeah. I don't get it. I don't understand the level of, he is, like, it doesn't seem healthy.
Full tilt.
Yes. So, I guess he watches Iris bring the flowers back to life with magic, because, again, she can. And I'm thinking in my head, well, what's the point of giving her dead flowers if she's just going to bring them back to life? Or was that the point? Was he like, here, do magic for me? Like, I don't...
No. I think it's to contrast their holidays of, like, he's so macabre and she's so, like, pretty fields of... Which is why you've seen the movie... Is it called Jack Frost? The animated one where the Easter Bunny is, like, super jacked and crazy. What's it called?
Oh, no, that's not.
Oh,
Guardians of. Isn't it just called The Guardians?
The Guardians, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that movie.
I do too. It's so sad.
We should watch that over this holiday season.
Yes.
Okay.
We shall.
I'm writing it down.
Anyway, so, like, I guess Nick sort of watches Hex and Iris sort of have a moment. And, like, it didn't read as a romantic moment to me.
No.
But, like, maybe, like, friendship or, like, just a moment of connection. That was, like, genuine. So, the race is about to start, and Nick and Chris have to get some pictures in before the race gets going. So, obviously, Nick ends up next to Hex, and, like, it seems like there's an insinuation that Hex will be racing. like maybe from some of the reporters.
Yeah.
Some other reporters ask how Hex has been enjoying Christmas, and he comments on how cold he is.
So he's you.
He is me. And he just says he spends most of his time in Mexico helping to oversee Dia de los Muertos. I wish that part was me.
Yeah.
But it's
Agreed.
not. So, like, he's literally in the middle of speaking about his mom and dad being in Mexico, and King Claus just, like, cuts him off entirely and says that he's excited to show Halloween all that Christmas has to offer.
Like his son?
Hilarious. But, like, I also think that he, like, slaps him on the back or, like, holds his shoulder and, like, squeezes it or something. Like,
yes.
He's very obviously throwing his weight around to, like, to be, like, you know, keep up this pretense.
Yeah, in, like, a worrying way. Like, you don't touch people like that. Like,
just don't touch anybody.
Unless you guys have a safe word. You don't touch people like that. God.
So reporters are asking Hex about racing, and obviously King Claus wants him to race, and just so that he gets beaten, essentially. And he's like forcing him with his hand on his shoulder to be like, yes, I'll be racing in the sleigh. So Nick, just like to try and get him away from Hex, says, oh, Dad, like, Ren, who is his dad's like personal assistant, needs him right away. So, like, he's being really protective of Hex, which is cute.
Yeah.
But he essentially sends his dad away so that he doesn't have to, like, talk to them anymore. So Claus walks away, and the reporters ask again about Hex's participation. Like, they won't get off his back. And Nick locks eyes. Nick and Nick and Hex lock eyes. And Iris has to, like, come over and intervene because they're being so obvious, like, staring into each other's eyes, which, again, is so weird.
I'm just like, how does nobody notice?
Yeah. Anyway, so Iris comes over, and, like, the reporters are all sort of still there, and they're like, ooh, Princess Iris, are you gonna run the sleigh? And Hex is like, oh, like, I'll ride with you to Iris. Like, he's like, I'd rather ride with you. But she's like, sorry, I'm not participating. So she's like, but Nick will be happy to take you. So, like, literally in front of all these reporters and press, knowing that they can't say no, Iris managed to get them on the sleigh together.
Even though literally last night he was like, please don't do this to me.
So there's, like, all this trash talking between Nick and Chris, and it's really funny. And, like, Nick can tell that Hex is nervous. But Hex just says, like, I'm not gonna back down, I got this. He's, like, hyping himself up. Which is cute. So Hex tries his hand at the trash talk and makes some biting remarks at Nick. And then, like, the jokes fall aside, and then we get serious for a second that, like, his parents went back to Mexico that morning, so now he's alone.
That would be hard.
Well, considering you're, like, a prisoner in this home, and the only two people that you, like, know and love are like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
But we actually have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, so I guess Hex says that, like, the summit that they're talking about that his parents had to go back. Like, it's an annual summit. So his parents are needed there for this annual summit. And apparently it's a strategy meeting with all the other, like, autumnal holidays. And just asks, he's like, wait, like, Christmas doesn't do that or doesn't have that? But anyway, the assumption that Nick makes about, essentially, he's like, oh, I guess he's saying, like, no, why would we strategize with other holidays when nobody is equal to us? So, essentially just being like, we're better than you are. Hex sort of, like, rolls his eyes because, like, of course Christmas would think that. And also is like, anytime anyone with any power gets close enough to you guys, you consider that a threat and you work to shut it down. Like, why? Any sort of, like, I don't understand why you do that. And he also, I guess, Hex also says, like, he's like, I've seen you and Easter really close. Like, why didn't your father foster those connections with others? Like, in his own holiday? Like, why is he going out to Easter and having a friendly relationship and not having a friendly relationship with
Thanksgiving,
yeah,
New Year's, yeah,
Hanukkah
nearby, yeah. Which I only say those ones because those are the ones that get mentioned later, and like she doesn't really mention the other holidays of like winter holidays around the same time in the book, but I assume that that's what she means. I don't know.
I would assume. And then she's like trying to excuse away Easter being included. Like, it's April. That's still, you know.
Well, it's the first holiday that I get off work after New Year's.
Oh,
which
wow.
Is rough.
That is rough. So I guess they're sort of like in the sleigh and they're going and they're bantering the whole time. And so Nick, like, just says, like, hey, as long as you're here, why don't we just be friends?
Because that's going to happen.
Yeah. And, like, he's like, you know, even though we're both competing for Iris's hand, like, let's just be friends. And Hex initially is like, no thank you. But, like, Nick's like, we're not pledging our undying allegiance to each other. We're just taking it a day at a time. So I guess Hex is sort of like, oh, okay. So he's like standing in the sleigh at this point, and he hauls Hex into it. And they have a moment where their bodies are touching. And like, Nick is, this is what I mean. I don't even know how to describe him. He is certifiable. Because he's like, oh my god, our bodies are touching. And like makes a gigantic deal over the fact that our bodies are touching.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh my god, this is so hot. Our bodies are touching. Like literally the sides of their bodies. But like, I guess Nick sort of knows that, like, he sort of knows the reality of Hex's situation, right? Like, he knows that this is all a hoax. And like, he just doesn't want to, I guess, like, hurt his feelings, do any more damage, like, really anything.
Yeah.
He just doesn't want to hurt him. So he tries to, like, back away. They have some more banter back and forth, and that's really cute. And, like, Nick is literally obsessed with Hex and his eyes and his laugh. And, like, he says that he feels like he's having a full-on crisis because all of the joy he's been looking for in others, he's found himself. Like, he's found it in Hex's laugh. Mm-hmm. So literally everything that he's been searching for, he has found in this one person.
Great. We love when that happens.
Yeah. So, like, he takes his glove off to show Hex some, like, Elsa magic. And
yeah, because he makes a joke about his brother's name is Kristoff and his
yes,
reindeer's name is Sven, and he's like the movie Frozen, and Cole
yeah,
is like, what do you mean?
yeah. It's a funny little exchange.
Yeah.
So he takes his glove off to like show him some magic, but essentially all it does is it showcases his beautiful black and orange nails.
Love it.
And I guess Nick describes it as all of the air being sucked out of the room for both of them. So, ugh. It's just like, it's really romantic, but at the same time, it's just sort of like, is that romantic? So, the start bell sounds for the race, and like they were so caught up in each other's eyes that they're late leaving, so they have to like speed up in order to catch up. So they have a fun time like dodging branches and racing, and he's trying to go faster to lose, like to impress Hex, but Hex sort of grabs his arm because he's concerned about something, which causes the sleigh like to sort of tilt, and then when it's righted again, Nick sort of looks around. He's like, I wonder where Hex is, and like turns out he fell off the sleigh. So he like flips out, and he just like freaks out that he hurt himself. But he's like, I'm okay. And there's this like second where that thing that we always complain about, the looking down at their lips.
Oh
yeah. So that happens. They're like looking at each other, and like somebody's licking their lips suggestively. But then like they're also on the side of the road during a race. So
there's more sleighs coming that could run them over.
Exactly. So Chris had actually managed to like, I don't know if Nick got ahead of him or what, but Chris came up behind them and was like, there's more people coming, you should probably like not be there.
Yeah.
So like after that, Nick's like, I'm not gonna drive recklessly anymore. So Chris feels really guilty. Not Chris. So after Chris has sort of like come upon them and like been like, hey, you guys should probably like get back in the sleigh. They do get back in the sleigh, and like Nick feels so guilty for causing Hex to fall out of the sleigh in the first place. He drives like very sedately for the rest of the race. So they obviously lose. They come in second last place, and Chris wins. So after that whole thing, there's like more photo ops, and like Nick just thinks that like everything taking place right now is really fake, and like Hex doesn't deserve what they're doing to him. In other words, like unfairly making him fight for Iris. I'm like, yeah, I mean, you should be able to have some semblance of choice in who you marry.
Yeah, and obviously, like, they're getting married on Christmas Eve. Hex thinks he's got a shot here, allegedly, and he really doesn't.
Yeah. So that night there's like an informal dinner at the palace in the library, which sounds absolutely glorious. And Santa Claus is not there. So Nick sort of gets mad at Iris. He's like, earlier I asked for your help in like having me forget about this boy, and now you're encouraging it. Like, what's the deal? And he just said that like he wants to see us happy, he doesn't want to see us fail, and blah blah blah. Earlier, like, and this was actually a genuine moment that I actually really enjoyed. So like he talks to Iris and he's like, genuinely, I literally asked you to keep me away from him because I should not fall for him. But she's like, I saw how he looked at you. So, like, I just want you guys to be happy together. Which is really cute.
Yeah.
But then he's telling Iris that, like, Hex does not deserve this situation. And how shitty it is. But then all of a sudden Hex shows up. And, like, Chris is like, wait till you hear what I stumbled upon today during the race. And essentially is just, like, teasing him about finding him and Hex, like, on the road together. Like, very close. Like, their faces were very close together. So Hex goes to get food. And Iris is like, ooh, okay, what happened, Chris? Like, he wants to know. She wants to know. But I guess to keep it to a minimum, Nick tells her about Hex falling out of the sleigh, and he's overwhelmed because he wanted her to keep him away from him. And, like, all this does for Iris and Chris is cement that, like, yeah, he's got it real bad.
Yeah, but you'd think that they would also, like, actually try to help him stay away from him, since they are selling this ploy that he and Iris are literally getting married on Christmas Eve. It's a bad look for Easter if he's flirting with her other potential suitor.
Yeah.
So you'd think that she would actually help him, even out of just, like, selfishness. Sorry, I forgot that word.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But she's a good friend, and she's like, no, you could be happy with him.
Well, I guess ideally, aren't they thinking that, like, I don't know, that they can get out of it? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Nick especially, he still thinks that there's a chance.
Yeah, and it's a romance book at its core.
Yes.
So we all think there's a chance.
Yeah. What if she ends up with Hex?
I was wondering at one point if, like, they would try that, and I was like, what is happening?
Anyway, Chris just tells Nick that he has to clear the air with Hex about what? Because this tension is no good between them. And, like, apparently Hex is there for the whole month, so gotta get going. So Nick goes up to Hex and asks him to call him Cole, but also is like, can you meet me down this really sketchy library alley? So they agree to meet in the stacks of the library, and it's really cute because they are like, I'll stagger my arrival so that I'm there in like 5 minutes and you're there in like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is really cute. So he goes to I guess Nick shows up at the stacks and he has a wave of memory. Like, apparently he has a wave of, like, he remembers being really excited about Santa and his family legacy and how they bring joy to the world. And, like, he remembers his dad feeling that way too, but then his mom left. So, like, everything is the mom's fault. So, Hex shows up, and all Nick can do is, like, apologize, because he feels like he keeps setting up these awkward too close situations. And I'm like, okay. I don't remember that.
Yeah.
And then he's like, he's apologizing for everything, including, I don't know if he's apologizing for all these really close situations.
Yeah.
And this one is all romantic-y, I guess. Like, they're all close and they're in stacks. How much more romantic can you get? And he just tells Hex, like, you should be mad at me. And Hex is like, why? Like, I'm not. And I don't really, like, I understand it's, like, Nick's self-loathing that makes him think this way. But I honestly don't know why his dad should even be mad. Well, I guess, but like...
Yeah, I guess the whole thing is like, you should be mad at me because this is all a lie. Like,
but like he doesn't...
I'm playing into it.
He doesn't know that.
Yeah, but I think that, isn't this the start of him being like, going to tell him?
Yes.
So I guess maybe he's preemptively saying it. I don't know.
Maybe. Anyway, he tells Hex that, like, he should be mad at him. But he isn't. But then he, like, so after, like, Hex is like, why should I be mad at you? I'm not mad at you, blah, blah, blah. He just is like, I have to tell you something. This whole thing is fake. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, how good was that last kiss? For you to literally, like, give up every trade secret you have. Yeah. And he just says, like, he lets out that the whole competition is fake, that Halloween doesn't stand a chance because it's already slated in stone that him and Iris are going to get married, but him and Iris don't really want to get married to each other either. It's all a ruse and blah, blah, blah. And, like, he's literally known this guy for, like, a week.
Yeah. Probably less. They've only had one event.
Two events. The meet and greet. Events. And the sledding, but then the makeout session in the alleyway.
Yeah. But it's only been like a few days that he's been here. But still.
So Hex just sort of surprises him and says that, like, I know that it's fake. Which is sort of the twist that I mentioned at the beginning. I'm like, there's a twist. Here's the twist. Like, this is not a secret. Hex knows what's happening. And that he is known since the Halloween envoys came back, like, a few days ago. Remember when the Halloween envoys showed up and they're like, they can't get married. We need our hat thrown in the ring. Mm-hmm. So, apparently, like, about an hour after they got back to Halloween territory, Santa Claus sent them a letter, and it was like a threat. Yeah. And he essentially said, like, don't forget what will happen if you cross me. So he also says, he's like, how much joy does Christmas control? And Nick's like, oh, about 57%. My dad talks about it all the time. And he's like, yeah, like, when somebody with that much joy sends you a note, you need to pay attention. Mm-hmm. And he just said, essentially, this competition for Iris's hand is a cover to excuse him being here, when realistically he's a bit of a prisoner. I say a bit of a prisoner because, like, he's dressed all nice and he's fed and he can wander around the castle. The only thing, he's not allowed to go home. Yeah.
And I also feel like he could probably go home. I'm like, I get that there's like this, I don't know. Yeah.
Could he just throw, like, a piece of candy? Like everyone else has, like, a little holly sprig, or, like, could he just throw that?
Yeah, he has his own thing. Yeah. We'll get it. Maybe next week?
Oh. I'm thinking it's Halloween candy. Essentially, Nick is really, like, shocked and hurt that Hex is their prisoner. Even though, like, Hex keeps saying, no, I'm not your prisoner. It's not the same. So, like, I don't really know what to call him. I keep calling him the prisoner, even though I know that's not probably 100% right. Yeah. But, like, Nick is really shocked and hurt that his dad is doing this. Like, even keeping a prisoner, like, the littlest bit is bad.
Manipulating everybody because, like, they all thought that Hex was coming thinking he had a shot, but Hex knew all along he never had a shot. So, like, nobody knows what the fuck is going on. Yeah. His dad is manipulating everyone.
Yes. So he just is like, I guess Nick is freaking out a little bit. because he has no idea what information his father has. And he just doesn't know what's on the go. So he's feeling all of this guilt, and he like falls to his knees. He's just like, oh my God, I'm terrible. Everybody deserves better. I'm the worst. And he's just really going for it. He's having a real good pity party.
Yeah, it's a drama moment.
Yeah. And he's just saying, like, everybody deserves more than what I can give them. And I think he's not just talking about Hex here. He's also talking about his brother. He's talking about Iris. Like, he has all these different relationships with these people. And he needs to learn how to be friends with others, too.
Yeah.
So Hex just tells Nick, like, I didn't tell you that I knew about the deal or anything. Like, I didn't tell anyone so that you would do something about it. Like, he's like, I have it all under control. Don't worry about it. And Nick's just like, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to let him touch you. Don't you worry about it. And then, of course, Hex kneels next to Nick, and Hex just reiterates that I can take care of myself. I can take care of my own holiday. It's time you did too. And he's just saying, like, don't jeopardize everything you've got going on for this.
And that's not foreshadowing.
Is it?
Yeah.
What happens?
I believe so. I'm not going to tell you what happens. You'll get there eventually.
I don't like this. So then all of a sudden Hex is kneeling next to Nick, and he just keeps saying, I can take care of myself. He can take care of his own holiday or whatever, and it's not a big deal, and blah, blah, blah. But, like, he just says, and this happens over and over again, he's like, don't waste your responsibilities on me. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'll take care of my holiday, you take care of your holiday, but don't put me before your holiday.
Yeah.
And, like, Nick is like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. But, he's still, like, on the floor, like, oh my God, I'm the worst. And Hex just, like, kisses it. And apparently it's the most intense kiss on the planet. And he's, like, says in the book that Nick says that he's been ruined, eviscerated, and shattered over this one kiss.
Wow.
So much so that it's described for 5 pages in my audiobook. Not audiobook, my digital book.
Ebook, yeah.
Yeah. My ebook. So yeah. So it's very, and it's not even that, like, hot and steamy. It's a lot of, like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Like, I thought I imagined this feeling, but I didn't. And, like, it's a lot of thoughts.
I guess there is a bit to building up somebody after, like, one kiss and being like, they gave me the best advice ever, and then we kissed and it was amazing, and it might have been a drunken mirage. Like, there's a lot to feeling that and then being like, and it was true. But yeah, it is very intense here.
Yeah. So they stop kissing because apparently Nick still feels guilty about leading Hex on a little bit. Like, not leading him on, but, like, leading him to believe that he has a chance with Iris. So, like, even though,
like, a Easter alliance, which I guess, like, if Easter and Halloween were together, they would be able to rival Christmas.
Yeah, you would think. I just, like, just bothers me that he's like, oh, I'm so guilty. Oh, I'm so guilty.
Yeah.
So Iris then comes on scene, and she's stomping really loudly so she doesn't interrupt anything. And she just comes over and says, like, the photographer needs this for pictures. but like Nick sort of looks all messed up. Anyway, so seeing Hex like that gets Nick all upset again, and that, like, you know, he's there the way he is, and he's like, screw that reporter that needs their picture taken. He's like, screw him, I'm going to talk to my dad.
Okay, so Cole goes to his dad's office immediately and just blurts out, he's our prisoner, and he's like, you're keeping Hex? And it's just like, he realizes a second later that it was fucking stupid to just blurt that out, because how does he know? And his dad basically says that, and he's like, I heard Hex talking on the phone with his parents. And you're like, I guess.
That is such a bad, like, cover-up.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. And, like...
I heard his parents. Like, come on, dude.
But also, you know, he, like, delayed before he said it. He didn't just say, I heard him talk. He was definitely like, oh, shit. But he just asks, actually, if they have any other prisoners. Which is...
It was really funny. It's like, do we have a dungeon I need to know about?
Yeah. And it's mostly to, like, deflect the fact that he's lying. But, you know. So his dad just, like, laughs that off, kind of, but says that Hex is going to be able to go home when Cole and Iris are finalized, and that this isn't much different than their original plan anyway, because Hex never had a shot, and now he just knows he doesn't have a shot. And he says they need to keep certain people in line. And Cole's just like, what do you mean by certain people? Like, who else are you keeping in line? So his dad asks if he's ready to ask that question, and he says he isn't sure that Cole's ready, but Cole kind of, like, realizes that it's time and he needs to do something. Even if he fucks it up, like, he at least needs to know what's going on, kind of thing. So He kind of just says, like, he knows he messed up so much, but if he's going to take over someday, he needs to know how, and, like, how to become a part of it all and what to do. And he's, like, super sincere, and his dad can see that he's sincere, is kind of surprised by it. So he, like, gets a folder, and he says, this is a test, and you failed all of the other tests. And he says not to abuse the knowledge, and we're like, oh, God. So he gives Cole the folder, and Cole looks through it, and it shows other holidays, and he mentions Yule, Thanksgiving, and New Year's, and it shows, like, a percentage of tithes that they're giving of joy, and that it's, like, as high as 40%, and it had increased year to year up to 40% in some places over, like, the last decade. And he's just like, what does this mean? And his dad explains that the other holidays pay a tithe to be, like, under Christmas's umbrella. And Cole is just like, what do you mean? Like, why would they agree to do that? But his dad just says, like, you know, this is a enterprise, and to keep it successful, we need to keep people in line. So he persuaded them to, like, the other holidays to agree to this deal, in quotation marks. Mm-hmm. And Cole, like, does the math and realizes that Christmas actually gets more than 3/4 of their joy from other holidays. So their joy isn't even from, like, the holiday itself. And that's, like, their big, what is that called? Their big showcase. Their big, like, that's what they're showing everybody that they have, is how much joy. It's their big, like...
Yeah, it's their big, like, their big brag. Their big brag.
Yeah. Whatever another word for that is. Their big brag.
I don't really know what else to call it either. It's like, yeah. It's how they show they're so powerful.
It's their flex.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then his dad shows him another sheet, which just, like, explains how his marriage to Easter is going to fit in, and how they're going to have so much more joy because of Easter and all that. And he's like, what is Easter even getting out of this? His dad says that Cole is actually the one who pointed out that Christmas is viewed as cheap, and that is an unfortunate side effect of expanding, but that their holiday is actually capable of so much more, and that Christmas at its core is about family, and like that's the long-term goal that he has, like that Santa has. And Cole's like kind of surprised because he actually agrees completely with what his dad is saying about like what Christmas is about and all that, but like he wouldn't do it like this, and he doesn't want to do it like this. His dad says that like the holidays that they're taking tithes from are actually on their way out, and he can't let the same thing happen to Christmas. So those holidays are using their dying joy for good, and it'll make Christmas better. And we get in Cole's head a little bit that like holidays do come and go. It's like a reality of this world, but normally they like evolve over time, and like they could have a religious aspect and then they move on to something else, and like, you know, like they do. Like, but this, what his dad is doing isn't the natural order of how holidays get like taken out. So he's,
yeah, well, essentially like they're giving up their joy, which is like almost like giving up part of their influence, which is sort of making them wane faster.
Yeah.
And like they don't actually know. Like the dad is like, oh, it's the natural order, they'll eventually fade out, but like not necessarily.
Exactly.
Like they could fade to low and then gain resurgence. Like,
yeah. Like I feel like Halloween has done that over the years. Mm-hmm. Definitely. Especially with like maybe too far back, but like I don't think Halloween was super popular when they were burning witches.
No. I wouldn't say it is.
And you know, in racist times, Halloween also gets a bad rap sometimes because of its relationship with Dia de la Muerta. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it, but yeah. So yeah. His dad basically is just like, well, we're all businesses. All the holidays are businesses, and they all have information and reputations. And Cole is just like, wait a second. Are you blackmailing everybody? And he kind of just is like, yes. So
I actually low-key love how, like, he's just like, yep, yes I am.
I'm like, oh, okay. Like, Santa's blackmailing people. Great. So Cole asks him, like, how Halloween fits in with it all. And we actually get that, like, Halloween originally reached out to Christmas years ago to form an alliance, but they backed out because we're assuming they didn't want to get bullied and blackmailed. But he's, like, using that against them, and, like, you said there was, like, an autumnal holiday group.
Yeah, like a collective.
Yeah, that's a good word. Collective. So that collective didn't know that Halloween reached out to Christmas, and if they found out, they'd probably be pissed that Halloween did that.
Yeah, almost like going behind their back to like align themselves with like the evil
the bully.
You know what I mean? Like not the rival holiday.
Yeah. So he's using that against them, and that's what he has against them, that they're willing to like just drop Hex off and leave him there till Christmas. He also mentions that like he's been too busy to deal with them until now, but Cole knows that just means like they have a lot of power themselves. Like Halloween is its own powerful holiday. But he says Christmas is ready to branch out now from just the winter holidays, which are the ones they've already blackmailed. And obviously they're reaching out with Easter, and Cole is just like, well, are you blackmailing them? But he's like, no, we've been friends forever. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. And we're like, ugh. Feels like it's not.
Yeah.
But his dad says then, and this is kind of interesting, that holidays share joy all the time. So this isn't really anything new, which is just kind of like an interesting concept. Like, I wonder if it's to like keep holidays from fading, if other holidays like just share joy with them, or like what the point is, or like different times of year, if like Christmas would give Valentine's Day some joy. I don't know, because they're in different times of year. I don't know. It's just thrown in there, and I don't know why, or why they would give joy to each other, but they do. And Cole actually thinks of Hex mentioning his collective allies guys, and he
allies guys
allies guys, yeah.
Lovely.
And he thinks that Hex definitely didn't mean it the same way his dad is like doing his business. Like Hex isn't, or he assumes Hex isn't blackmailing everyone, which would be quite the twist.
Or is he?
Yeah. His dad says, though, like, Halloween thinking they had a say in Christmas is actually what the problem is, because they came in and they were like, you can't just marry Easter. So he's, like, basically punishing them by taking Hex, just to show them that, like, they can't stop Christmas, which is, like, ugh.
Sketch.
And, like, Halloween can't not have agreed to it, because then they'd look like the bad guy. So he actually says that, like, in the end, everyone's going to look good. Like, Halloween will run back to their allies and they'll look like the victim having lost Easter, but they'll look like a hero for even trying to stand up to Christmas. And everyone will end up getting what they want. And Cole is just like, but it's all blackmail. And his dad takes the folder back, and then the room goes freezing cold, like, with his magic.
Oh, dear God.
And I'm like, oh, he has temper issues. And he just says, like, Cole doesn't understand the realities of managing the biggest holiday in the world. And you're like, he doesn't, but also, blackmail is not a great...
Blackmail is bad.
It's not a great business model. I'll say that.
Yeah.
But he kind of ends the conversation by saying, like, he's trusting him with this information, even though Cole has given him no reason to trust him. And he's going to give him time to process it before he'll give him a bigger role. And what he does with the information will determine what kind of Santa he will be. And Cole just, like, realizes in his core that, like, that sentence is true. It will determine the kind of Santa he is. And then, of course, his dad tells him to take the nail polish off his fingers before the next event. Because, obviously, they're Halloween colors. I don't think he cares that he's wearing nail polish. And then...
Yeah, can I be honest and say that, like, the sexuality piece seems, like, not important.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate.
Yeah, it really does. It's just, like, in the holidays, everybody's everything.
Yeah.
Which is fair. Yeah, so it actually, his nails make him think of Hex, just like everything else in the entire world. And it makes him wonder if his dad would use him and Hex, and, like, even just the fact that they've kissed, if he would use that against Halloween in some way, and it makes him feel sick. So he just...
So you would think that would be like, maybe I should...
Stay away.
Keep my distance.
Yeah. You would think.
But it really does not.
No, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
So Cole says to him, like, he wants to be good at this. And his dad agrees, and he's like, he wants him to be good at it too, for himself, for his brother, and for the thousands of employees and the people who depend on the joy they have. And he says they have such potential to do good in the world. And, like, Cole agrees with that too, obviously just not this way. But it's just interesting because, like, his dad's coming from, like, a place where he wants to do good. He's just going about it by blackmailing people, which is obviously wrong.
I also feel like a part of it has to do with the fact that, like, where his wife left. I feel like he is going about things in the completely wrong way, mostly because he's, like, broken.
Yeah.
After her abandoning them.
Yeah. That's fair. It's not an excuse, but it's a reason kind of thing.
No.
Yeah. I get that. His dad tells him then to be more attentive to Iris at the events and not to disappoint the family. We're like, great. Easy. That'll be easy. So Cole goes to his room and he kind of like starts to have a full-on panic attack. And he was worried about like Christmas in general before he even realized that Christmas was bullying and blackmailing other holidays and taking their joy.
It sounds so ridiculous when you say it out loud.
It really does. That's why, like, it's just funny. Like, fun books like this, it's weird to, like, just dig so deep into them that kind of like we are. But it's fun.
It is fun.
So the next day, there aren't any events. So Cole just, like, stays in bed. And he's just processing and wondering, like, how he missed all of this. Like, how his dad did it all and he had no idea. And, like, how he can fix it without fucking everything up. Or without it being treason. Because, like, obviously, if he goes behind his dad's back, that's treason. Chris shows up then with some food, because he hasn't left his room. And he asks why he's ignoring them. And he asks if they should ostracize Hex, because he's assuming this has something to do with him. But Cole says, like, no, it went great with Hex. And Chris is like, good, because we like him. Which is just sweet.
Aww.
And then Chris is like, well, it must be our dad then. And Cole's just like, ugh. But Chris showing up makes him think about, like, how much Chris helps him and how much he does for him and how he's always there. And he, like, says that to Chris. And Chris is kind of deflects and is like, well, we're there for each other. And Cole is just like, I'm not really there for him the way he is for me. He doesn't really say it completely out loud, but he's like realizing that he's, not the best friend of this entire book.
Well, I guess that's the thing, right? I guess he's finally realizing that, like, he hasn't been a great friend. And, like, yesterday, I say yesterday, I mean yesterday in the book with Iris.
Yeah.
At least I think it was yesterday in the book.
Yeah, it was.
And not, like... Yeah. And, like, when he's, like, talking to her and just not realizing anything.
Yeah, when she painted his nails and he was like...
Yeah. And they're just talking and he's like, I didn't know this about you. How did I not know this about you? And she's like, I don't tell you these things because you can't talk about important things.
You just make jokes about shit.
So, like, I think I'm glad that he's having this realization that, like, he needs to become a better friend.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. So Chris just kind of asks, like, did their dad finally say something that's going to make him ... And Cole's like, what are you talking about? And Chris is like, well, he just says, like, he does take care of him, but it still won't stop Cole from leaving. And Cole just, like, thinks about it for a bit, and he's like, do you mean to go back to school? And then he kind of clicks in, and he's like, oh, you think I'm going to leave you like our mom did? And he's shocked that Chris thinks that, which is just kind of funny. He's very much in his own head and oblivious to other people until this moment.
Yeah. And he was very hurt, like, about that whole thing. Like, he was like, I can't believe you would think that of me.
Yes. Yeah. And they kind of have that conversation, because Chris is just like, he says he's watched Cole fight with their dad his whole life, and there's no way he hasn't thought of leaving. But he's like, we're in his head, and it genuinely hasn't crossed his mind ever. No. Which is just kind of funny. And he promises.
But I honestly think that he's in, like, I want to say survival mode. Like, he's literally just like, okay, what can I do? What can I do to get through, like, my life, essentially, until I can take over for my dad?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he actually, like, this is what we were sort of talking about earlier, was, like, he actually wants to do this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he wants to be a part of Christmas, and, like, there are aspects of it that he really enjoys. He just wants to do a full overhaul, or he needs to do a full overhaul to, like, I don't know, make sure that Christmas runs the way he wants it to. But, like, he does want to be involved in Christmas, and it's never sort of been in his mind to not.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is just, I don't know, I can't imagine never thinking of, like, running away from, like, the thing that
all
you're...
of your responsibilities.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think about that daily. But it's, you know, it's a, I guess he's got the audacity of a white man. So yeah, he basically promises Chris that it has never crossed his mind. And he also says, like, he wouldn't leave all of this on Chris anyway. And he wouldn't leave Chris because, like, he knows how hard it was that their mom left him. So he wouldn't do that to him again. And he's like, he says, like, their mom left him, but he also had to watch how devastated Chris was after she left. And even to an extent, how devastated their dad was. And he would never hurt him like that. He kind of thinks of his conversation with Iris, which is funny because we just brought this up, and how he makes jokes to make himself comfortable, but he doesn't actually, like, give other people what they need. He just, like, worries about him being comfortable. So he kind of tries to, like, change everything about himself in this one moment. But he asks Chris what it was like for him when their mom left. And he's just like, you were there, you remember. And Cole just says, like, he remembers Chris crying a lot and their dad shut down and he was just angry. Chris kind of, like, tries not to talk about it, but eventually he does. And he says he doesn't think he's ever been mad at her. And he says, like, when she left, she was reading a book to him, and he kept thinking that she was going to come back to finish reading the book, which is just the saddest. Cole then asks, like, what book it was, and he says Bridge to Terabithia. And when she was reading it to him, it was like a fantastical story, and it was great. But then he finished it, and it was like his first time reading a book and realizing that, like, they could have sad endings and that not everything would be a happily ever after. So it was like she destroyed his innocence in multiple ways by leaving. And innocent, like, his childhood innocence, not like, yeah. But yeah, it's really sad.
Which is, like, that book choice.
Oh my God.
Is
she was getting ready to leave. She was just like,
terrible.
She must have been, like, prepping him for the sadness of her leaving by being like, we'll finish this book and then I'll leave.
May as well get him used to disappointment.
Yeah. Cole's basically like, that's a fucked up book. And he's like, wait, you read it? And he's like, no, I watched the movie, obviously. And we're just like, of course. But Cole kind of realizes that, like, Chris still wants his mom in his life because he wants her to change and he wants her to bring back happy endings. And that's why he texts her back and why he isn't angry at her, because, like, he's hoping that she'll change, which is obviously devastating because it seems like she's, like, classic narcissist and never going to.
Yeah.
But then he tells Chris he isn't leaving because this is his home and Chris is his home and he was serious. He will be Santa one day and all of this will be there happily ever after, kind of like together, you know, like as brothers though.
Yes, yeah. He's envisioning them taking over together. Like, it's not just Nick being Santa. It's Nick and Chris together.
Yeah. Because, like, you can't do it all alone anyway. So they hug, and Cole kind of realizes, like, he's realizing a lot about himself, I guess, but he realizes his nonchalant attitude is the issue, and he really needs to try harder. And he's, like, having this real, like, moment in his head, and then he's like, what the fuck is that? And there's an elf on the shelf behind his headboard. And he calls Chris a fucker. And Chris just starts laughing and says it's one of 4 that he hid in his room because of the grammar jokes. So, you know, it's a nice moment, and it leaves, like, they leave off happy. So that's good.
That's nice.
So the next day, Cole is getting styled for an event, and he feels like emotionally hungover. And he goes outside, and that's when he realizes that the event must be skating because Iris is in like leggings and a chunky purple sweater. Hex shows up, and Cole is immediately just overwhelmed by how hot he looks in like his long leather jacket. And he thinks of like, he looks like a vampire, and he thinks of him biting his neck. And then he notices that Hex is wearing like a jack-o'-lantern with Santa hat tie, which is cute. And Chris tells him it looks great. And Cole's like, oh, Chris got that for him because Chris is the one that gets all the weird Christmas decorate shirts, thingies, sweaters, and stuff. Cole kind of laughs at it, but then he thinks like, it's not really the look that Hex should be portraying for press. Because, like, obviously he's trying to get Easter and, like, showing a warmness to Christmas goes against his allies and all that stuff. So he's like, after what he learned, this is bad. But he does like seeing Hex in something Christmassy because he is territorial.
Mm-hmm.
Hex then says he's been marked by him... ... his holiday, he means. But like,
yeah,
we know he meant the first part. So right. Iris and Chris walk to their sleigh, and Cole and Hex are a bit behind. And Cole is just like, no, that's an innocent gift from my brother, but you're wrong. And he says like, he didn't mark him, but Hex'll damn well know when he does. And then he does say, if you'll let me, which we appreciate consent.
Yeah.
And then, of course...
token consent piece.
And then, of course, Hex licks his lips, because he loves to. And Cole is all hot and bothered. And then they get on the sleigh, and Hex just sits next to Iris, and he's like, fuck. Like, this is what we should be doing, is caring about the... I want to call it a tournament. It's not a tournament. Caring about the... what even is it? The race to get her hand? God, why am I so bad with words? Competition? Is that what you're going to say? Yeah, maybe.
I guess.
Yeah. So Cole gets in after him, and he says they're ready, and then he recognizes the driver, and this is like a common thing. Like, I think he talked to somebody else. Like, he talks to the kitchen staff a lot too. Like, he knows all these people that work in the North Pole, in their palace, all this stuff. But he talks to the driver and asks if his letter of recommendation to Yale helped his kid. And he's super self-deprecating about it. He's like, I don't know why you asked me. You should have asked my dad. But the driver says that his daughter is starting next fall and thanks Cole. And said, Cole's just like, no, I had nothing to do with her success. Tell her congratulations. But it's just like, what?
I feel like I'm just going to say what you just said.
Yeah.
Like, it's demonstrating how he cares about his people.
Yeah.
And, like, knows them all by name and, you know.
And the animals.
It's just...
yeah.
Yeah.
Showing how good he's going to be.
Yes. Whereas his dad is probably, like, piece of shit, doesn't know anybody.
Yeah. That's kind of where we're going. Or what it seems like. So Hex kind of looks at him, and he's like, there's a question in his eyes, but I don't know what it is. So he just smiles back at him. And he thinks, like, there's no press around, but as soon as they get to the rink, the public will be around, and their dad drilled it into their heads to be perfect there. Because you can't doctor the photos there like you can if they're in the palace. Because, like, there's actually people from the North Pole around, not just press and family and court. He does think, like, that would be the perfect place to do something about what his dad's doing if he knew anything that would help. But he doesn't. So Iris then asks Hex if he knows how to skate, and he says no, but he's sure that their father is going to insist that he does. Kind of like he insisted that he go on the sleighs. And Cole is still super defensive, but he says he doesn't have to do anything he doesn't want to, and he won't let his dad make him. But Hex just says, like, he'll try it anyway. And he's just like, how hard can it be? And Chris just says it's as easy as walking because he knows how much it pisses off Iris because, like, she's not immediately good at skating because she's an Easter princess.
Also, what I talked about earlier, like, hate skating with the fire of 1,000 suns.
It's not like walking at all.
It is not like walking at all.
Yeah. But he also suggests that, like, Hex could use one of those, like, pushy things that kids use, but he'd have to bend over super far. But Cole, like, uses his magic to push Holly into Chris's mouth to basically shut him up. He just spits it out and he's like, why'd you do that? It's poisonous. And Cole's just like, well, don't eat it then. And Iris just says, you never get used to them. And she's like, even after a decade, they're just as obnoxious. And Hex is surprised that they've known each other for so long. And Iris tells him that, like, I guess they've known each other for over a decade. And they kind of make a joke about how immature they are. And Chris, like, snaps back at her. And she's like, yeah, and this guy got into Cambridge. And Hex is like... yeah. And Hex is like, oh, yeah. So he just, like, asks what schools they're in. And Iris says, like, she's in Cambridge, too. Cole's in Yale. And he says, like, he's on his father's path. And it's to reshape his image. And then they ask where Hex goes. And he just, like, makes a joke about, like, completely deadpans that he's, like, in a reformatory that, like, is super haunted. And they're like, what do you mean? And he's like, no, I'm just joking. But he's just, like, really deadpan in how he jokes. But he says he goes to UNAM in Mexico City. And Chris says, like, you shouldn't joke about ghosts and, like, shudders. And Hex is like, I'm a prince of Halloween. Of course I'm gonna, like, joke about ghosts. But he says, like, are you aware of all of the ghosts that are in the palace? And Chris is, like, not sure if Hex is fucking with him or not. And then Hex's eyes go, like, completely black, and they all jump from it, which just, like, reminds me of Supernatural, of course. And Chris squeaks, because, like, he's really not good with, I wouldn't even call it horror, but, like, I guess horror, like, scary shit.
Macabre.
Yeah. And Hex tells him, like, he can hear the ghosts out here, the ghosts of Christmas past, Christmas present, Christmas future. And then he blinks and, like, obviously, it was a joke because of Scrooge. A Christmas Carol, whatever you want to call it. And Chris tells him to fuck off. And he's, like, still weirded out by the eyes. And he's like, was it Halloween magic? And Cole's like, what the fuck else would it be? And he's like, I don't know. You're like, okay. But Hex says he debated a ghost flying by them. And Chris is just like, terrified of that, but Iris tells him to make it look like a clown, and Chris is just like, I hate everybody. Cole asks him what he's studying at UNAM, and basically because he's kind of getting turned on by how, like, by Hex doing magic and, like, joking around and being fun. So he's like, I need to change the subject. So, like, Iris and Chris tell Hex that they're doing international relations, and Cole says he's doing global affairs, and Hex is doing international development and management. And obviously they're all pretty similar. I don't know what any of them are. I don't know the difference between any of them, but I'm sure somebody else would. And Hex is just like, yeah, obviously they're similar. But Cole says, like, he explains in the beginning he tried to major in theater to piss off his dad. But the department wouldn't actually have him because the Yale theater department is, like, prestigious, apparently. And then he tried to major in classical civilization, and then, like, humanities, and then a bunch of different languages. And then after a while, his dad just completely cut him off from money and magic, and it took him 2 days before he caved. And his dad basically told him what major he was going to do.
Yikes.
Yeah, good times. So Hex kind of just laughs at that and just asks why. And Cole says he's velociraptoring his dad's fences. And he explains, like, I kind of love it, but he explains in Jurassic Park the velociraptors would throw themselves against the electric fences to test for weak spots. So he does that with, like, his dad. Um, and Chris just says, imagine you were doing something useful instead. And like, it stings him, and it never would have before because like that's the joke. But like, he's actually realizing now that he needs to change and do something. But nobody really notices the shift in him except for Hex, of course.
Of course.
And like, he can't look away from Hex even though he knows like they're getting close to the rink and the reporters are near. You know, which would be bad. And it's actually not even just reporters. Like I kind of said before, there's going to be like so many other people just like taking their pictures. And Cole just like wants to get between Hex and all of the people because he wants to protect him, but he knows that he can't. So I guess they jump a bit of time and they are getting their skates on, and Santa comes over and tells them they need to get pictures before they get on the ice. And Hex just stands up with his skates on and then just sits back down, and he's like, nope, I can't do this. So Iris takes Chris away to leave Cole to help Hex, even though she just like promised that she wouldn't leave them alone like 2 minutes ago in the book. Cole thinks of like, they're just sitting there for a second, and Cole thinks of telling the press about the blackmail. But he knows that that would just make people turn on Christmas, and it would piss off the other holidays, and nothing good would really come of it. So he goes over then to help Hex, who's like pretty terrified, and they kind of joke a bit about like Hex thinks he's gonna die skating, and Cole promises like they wouldn't murder a guest this way, and Hex is just like, well, how would you murder a guest then? And he just thinks sexual tension, but he doesn't say it. But I just love it. So they go over for the photo, and his dad goes to like pull Hex front and center because like obviously, but Cole refuses and keeps Hex next to him. And I'm like, how everybody should see this. Like, I don't understand how nobody is like, they're in love already.
Yeah, but like people must see it,
or they have to. But I guess they get their pictures, and then Cole thinks like they cleared the rink for them so they can skate, quote unquote, with their people, but not actually with them because they can't be near the people. So it's really, I don't know, it's like celebrity, I guess. So obviously Santa's the first one out on the ice, and then House Frost we get are like really good at skating, which makes Cole wonder what else they lost in the cohesion of all these houses. So I guess their court is a bunch of different houses, and House Frost is the one that their mother came from. But, like, they're better at some things than the other houses. So, like, he wonders what, like, they could have brought if they didn't assimilate them all, basically.
Yeah. It actually sounds really cool because, like, all the houses contribute one aspect of, like, what creates Christmas joy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is really cool. So, like, the Frosts are, like, I assume, like, maybe ice skating and, like, maybe some of the other outdoor sports. Like, they give us joy.
Yeah.
And, like, I think they said, like, there's another house that's, like, the Yules or something like that. And they're, like, Yuletide. So, like, I don't know.
Carols,
really
maybe, or, like...
Carols and... Yeah, so, like, it's really interesting, the world building. Like, it's super creative.
Yeah, it is, yeah. I'd like to... Like, I kind of like how it got into it, that there wasn't too much information, and I like the, like, trickle effect of information of the world, but I'm also, like, I kind of want to know more about it. Yeah, so Cole and Hex kind of stay back to let everyone else go, and Hex asks him if their holidays are always like this with so much paparazzi, and Cole starts to say yes, but then he's like, well, actually, it didn't used to be this bad until after, like, their mom left. And that there's more press now because, like, obviously Santa's trying to control the narrative and keep everything. But he says, like, you learn to live with it, and that's why he stays off social media. So he asks Hex what Halloween is like, what their events and stuff are like, and he just makes a joke about, like, cobwebs and candy corns instead of candy canes and, like, temporary possessions. But he says, like, the events are a lot of fun. And he actually says that he has 3 triplet 9-year-old brothers, which is
God.
like...
It's like Brave with Merida all over again.
Yeah, which is like so many. That's so many kids. 9-year-olds. Oof. So he kind of starts telling him the things that his brothers love, and Cole is like, yeah, but what do you actually love? Like, you love things that people you love like because you like them being happy, but like he's not actually talking about himself. Mm-hmm. But he says that he likes the ofrendas. Not sure how you're supposed to say that, but I gave it a French tilt, and I'm sure it's not.
I think they're ofrendas.
Okay, that's yeah. So Cole is just like, oh, those are like altars in memory of the dead, and Hex is kind of just like surprised that he knows that. Because I'll be honest.
Hello, Coco.
Oh, really?
That movie Coco, yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet because I don't know why.
Well, I guess you don't have
Yeah. But I didn't know what it was either.
It's really cute. I mean, I think it came out probably 10 years ago. But it was like a whole it was a whole movie dedicated to like the Day of the Dead.
Yeah. I've definitely heard of it, and I've heard good things, but I don't think I've seen it yet.
Yeah, it's cute.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll watch it at some point. I watch most of the, like, Pixar movies at some point.
Yeah.
Like, we just watched Inside Out 2 the other day.
Oh, I liked that one.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Hex then kind of explains that he actually wasn't the original heir. He did have an older sister, and he says, like, she was amazing and big-hearted and funny and actually a lot like Cole.
Huh.
Yeah. So he says he likes that, like, he gets to celebrate with her in that way, and let her know that he misses her. And he says, like, his holiday, Halloween, creates joy in the terrifying, and Dia de Muertos creates joy in what's gone. So it's kind of like him explaining what Cole is missing from Christmas, kind of thing. Like, you know what I mean? What I'm trying to say?
Yeah, because Cole feels that like all Christmas is very
commercialized,
materialistic.
Yeah,
it's creating joy, but it's only creating it for that one day, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
Whereas Hex is sort of saying like Halloween creates joy in celebrating things that are no longer here, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it just seems to be a more meaningful it just seems to be a more meaningful holiday.
Yeah. Or yeah, I guess he understands the meaning of it, whereas Cole is kind of still searching for the meaning.
Yes.
The meaning of Christmas.
Oh my god.
I did it. I made it cheesy.
I hate it.
So yeah. So obviously Cole asks, like, is that enough? And Hex says, why wouldn't it be? But Cole gets into his, like, their holidays don't stop bad things or fix them. It's just a bit of joy. Like, his whole
tirade.
Yeah. And Hex asks if he thinks that's the only reason they should try. And then he brings up the night that they kissed for the first time. And
in the alley,
yeah. And Cole says he remembers everything. And Hex tells him he thinks their purpose is to help people endure the bad things, just like you said in week 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, that makes sense. And Cole asks if he means, like, by building the foundation that he mentioned in the alley. And he says, yes, they help people build it so they can withstand the bad things that happen in their lives. Which I think is a good way to look at it, and almost word for word what you were saying last week.
And I hadn't gotten to this point of the book yet, so I wasn't stealing it.
I know, because I was trying to be like, no spoilers, but we get there.
Yeah. But like, I will say that Cole doesn't seem 100% convinced.
No, like he's not, and I kind of like that. I kind of like that he's not immediately like, oh, this boy I like told me something and I'm gonna take it on.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, he asks again kind of like, and that's good enough kind of thing. And Hex says, like, he's making each little thing too big. And he just explains, like, he doesn't expect ofrenda. You just said it. I don't remember how you pronounced it. But he doesn't expect it to bring Raven back. But, like, setting it up makes him feel a little less alone. And if he can get that kind of quote-unquote joy out of it, then maybe other people will find that kind of joy too and feel a little less alone. So it's not like these great big things that Cole wants to happen with the joy and the holidays.
Yeah, like Cole wants to like end world hunger and like end poverty.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's what he thinks Christmas should do because it has the means to do it.
Well, I don't even know if they have the means to do that.
Well, I mean, if they have all that joy and all that magic, maybe it theoretically could.
Then I would think that they should.
And all that money.
then I agree with him.
But think too, they're like literally what's his name? Jeff Bezos could also end poverty.
Yeah, I think he should too.
Like he could.
I think all the billionaires.
Him and Elon Musk and Bill Gates, the three of them together could end world hunger and end poverty.
Yeah. And like, I love Taylor Swift, but like, she could too. Like, all of these billionaires and millionaires could do, and I will say, I do know Taylor Swift is donating like every show she does, she donates a ton of money in every different place she is to like the food banks and shit, which is amazing. But yeah, like all of these people could end all this stuff too. And I think they should. I think everybody should. Down with billionaires. And if Santa is a billionaire, he should give all of his money away too. Anyway. So Cole just says he wishes that he believed they were doing enough. And he realizes that being with Hex actually makes him think that the joy is doing something and like it's kind of helping. So he's kind of getting there. So he asks him then like how his sister died, if he's willing to talk about it. And he says a car accident 2.5 years ago. And I kind of was like, a car accident seems really mundane for people with magic. Like, I know it's shitty to say, but like, you'd think if you had magic, because like she would have had Halloween magic. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It just feels like
I know.
such
I agree with you. I feel like they have magic. They should have some aspect of longevity to their lives.
And like
maybe like cats and have 9 of them.
Yeah. Yeah. But obviously car accidents are like one of the deadliest things in our human world. But then he says he doesn't really do well talking about her and asks not to talk about her, which is fair. And Cole thinks like he kind of gets it because he's kind of that way about like his mother, and he knows it's not the same, so like he doesn't empathize and say that, but he does just thank him for telling him, and he says that he wishes he could have met her. And Hex agrees. They go back to joking about skating because it got too heavy. Mm-hmm. And Cole is like immediately falling hard for Hex. Like obviously not immediately because he was already this week, but it's just like drastic. And he thinks like Hex makes him want to recite hymns, but only when he's moaning. And it's like, okay, that came out of nowhere. And he promises Hex that he's not going to let him go. And he thinks he says it a bit too forcefully. And I'm like, are you still talking about skating? Like, really? And And they like go to walk out, and Cole actually grabs Hex's waist to keep him steady. And he knows there are cameras around, but he doesn't care, and he's decided that he's going to pretend that they're like normal, and this is kind of like a date. So he helps him skate, and he basically just drags him mostly, it seems like. And he thinks he knows he'll be sore tomorrow, but it's worth it to like lean into Hex in this moment. Which, like, he is falling hard. And then, of course, All I Want for Christmas Is You by Michael Bublé starts playing. And it's like the most romantic moment ever. And I think they stop and they just see Chris spinning Iris ahead of them. And they're both like smiling. And Hex is like, oh, they're cute, like couple, cute together. And Cole looks at Hex and realizes how close they are. And he actually thinks that he hopes Hex will ask him to kiss him. And he thinks he'd do it. But even with all these cameras, and if everyone saw that, like, everything's out the window.
Yes, yeah.
But Hex actually just tells him to stop looking at him like that. And they're literally just standing there staring into each other's eyes. And I'm like, how is nobody, like, feeling this tension?
But I feel like everybody is, because his dad is, you know.
His dad comes up right now. But.
Yeah, so, like.
Yeah. I'm like, why aren't they writing about this in the tabloids, though? Like, why aren't the people in public, like, taking photos and putting them up? And maybe they are. Maybe Cole just doesn't see it. So his dad interrupts them and tells Hex to go hang out with Iris, basically, because he needs a word with his son. And Cole looks up, and Iris has tears in her eyes, and we're like, she was just laughing 5 seconds ago. And Chris looks really pissed. And Cole also doesn't want to let Hex go because he promised him that he would help him and he wouldn't let him fall. But Hex is just like, no, it's okay. And he, like, pushes away from Cole and, like, reaches out for the railing and, like, shimmies his way over to Iris.
Oh.
Their dad then tells Cole and Chris that they know better and that image is paramount. And Cole's just like, but it's all a lie, so it doesn't matter. And his dad asks if he was wrong to share that information and if the Halloween prince is playing to his sympathies. And Chris is just like, what are you talking about? And everyone just ignores him. And then their dad says, stay away from him to Cole, and then tells Chris to stay away from her and to do their part or they won't like the consequences. And, like,
ooh.
Yeah. And, like, the whole time he's talking, he's, like, keeping a fake smile plastered on his face for the cameras, but he's, like, super intimidating and stuff. It's like, really. So then he leaves, and Cole tells Chris that Halloween knows that, like, this competition is a lie, and they're only here, and, like, Hex is only here to keep Halloween from voicing discontent before Christmas Eve. And he doesn't actually, like, Hex doesn't actually expect to have a chance with Easter. So Cole's like, but I gotta go. And Chris is like, wait, you can't just say that and leave. But he does.
It really bothers me that he does this.
I know, I'm like...
He literally leaves, like... He literally, like, gives his brother the bare minimum, and then it's like, okay, so bye.
Yeah. And then he goes over to Iris, and she's just like, your dad is an asshole. Which is just funny, because he's Santa. But he told her that she was jeopardizing the story, and she looked loose about her commitment to Cole. And I'm like, is he calling her a floozy? Like...
Yes.
What a dick.
He is calling her a floozy.
I hate it. So she then actually apologizes to Cole for leaving him with Hex because they literally had this conversation when she was painting his nails 2 days ago. But he's like, no, don't worry about it. I don't want to stay away from him anymore.
Aww.
Yeah. And then he kind of tries to get some information here. So he asks if if Easter actually wants this partnership with Christmas, or if they were coerced. Because he says he's only heard of the benefits to Christmas and not to Easter. So she jokes that, like, well, she gets his sparkling company, but then she says her father wants the notoriety. Sorry, that word was hard in my brain.
You got it.
I did.
If it makes you feel any better, so my students today were doing some what we call word work, where they just practice like some spelling and grammar rules, because we've found that spelling and grammar has really gone downhill. So we're trying to teach them some. What was the word? Oh, so the kids were like, Miss, what century? What's a century? And like, I hadn't looked at the work that closely.
Yeah.
My department had like made it up, and then I posted it, and then, so I hadn't looked at every single individual word that was there. And they were like, what's a century? And I was like, oh, a century is like a soldier, right?
Yeah.
And then, or no, not century, my bad, sentinel.
Oh, okay.
They're like, Miss, what's the word sentinel mean? And I'm like, that's a type of soldier, right? A sentinel. And then they're like, okay. And then I was looking, a kid came up and asked for help, and I looked at the sheet. It wasn't a sentinel, it was centennial.
Oh.
Which meant something completely different.
Yeah.
And I was like, boys, like, learn to read. No, I didn't say that. I was just kidding. But, like, I was just like, oh, guys, it's not sentinel, it's centennial. And then we had to go over what that word meant. So, like,
Yeah.
It's fine.
I thought you were going to say century and century, like 100 years.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Anyway, but yeah, so like, notoriety, who cares?
Yeah. And it just got me for a second, and I'm like, I definitely said it before, but anyway. But yeah, he wants the notoriety of Christmas, and he thinks that'll like appease the courts, and also he's gonna get joy out of it. And I'm like, how are both Easter? I guess they think they're gonna expand. I don't know. But she says that she thinks her father just likes someone else telling him what to do because he doesn't want to rule alone. And Cole's just like, but he isn't ruling alone. And she says, like, she does what she can. And she's just like, and Lily is who she is. And we're like, okay. But that makes Cole think that, like, she cares more about herself than the big things. And he thinks, like, she was pissed that he ruined her birthday. She didn't give a fuck that he ruined an entire country's, like, economy and stuff.
Yeah.
Which, like, I guess, I don't know. We're painting her pretty badly for someone we didn't really meet. And I'm like, eh. But, anyway.
Will we meet her?
Not in this book.
Okay.
But she basically clarifies, like, her dad wasn't forced. He just never thought that he could rule alone. And he's like, so there's no blackmail? And I'm like, if you're not going to tell her about the blackmail, don't bring up the word.
Yeah, I also don't understand why he can't just tell her.
Yeah, I know. Maybe he wants to tell his brother first. I don't know. But I don't know. But she just jokes that, like, he must think so little of himself. And he says he's out of her league, which makes her laugh a lot, which is kind of funny. And then she just, like, leans on his shoulder. And he looks around and he sees Hex is, like, watching some skaters. And he's, like, making some ghost reindeer for nearby kids to play with, which is just super cute with his magic. But then he looks over at them and immediately looks away. And Iris is like, oh, I think we're making him jealous. And I'm like, of course you are. Sin. And then Iris, like, thanks Cole for his concern and for listening to him, because I guess, like, this is one of the times when he actually listened to somebody and what they needed instead of jumping in with what he needed.
Yeah. So again, he's realizing he's a terrible friend.
Exactly. And he asks if she's still okay with the marriage. And she just says, like, she's more worried about what people would think if they found out it was a lie. And she says she would look flippant and selfish if they knew. And he wants to immediately just say, like, fuck what other people think. But he kind of has a realization in this moment that, like, she doesn't have that luxury. Like, she can't just say that because her court is under fire because of who her mother is. So it's like, he's really growing.
But, like, also, of course, like, straight white man it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah, just do it for yourself. It's fine.
No, everyone will forgive you. You'll never be, like, called out on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, we can't all be white straight men.
No. So,
Although he's not particularly straight.
No.
Who are we kidding?
This is a romance book. And I don't think it's going to end up straight. No. He was just going to learn hymns because he was holding a guy's waist. So I think...
Okay, fine. He's marginally marginalized.
Yeah. So he tells her then that he's still going to try to find a legitimate way to stop this because she deserves better. And he says, like, she deserves two people fighting over her because they actually are madly in love with her. Instead of, like, I would be kind of sad if there was, like, a triangle of guys fighting over me and then they fell in love with each other. That would...
Yeah, that would suck.
I wouldn't feel too good about my, like, self.
But, like, this is... I genuinely wonder how we're gonna solve this issue. And, like, I know that you already know, but, like, I am genuinely concerned for how this issue is going to be solved and how they're going to spin the optics of it.
I know. I was like 50 pages from finishing the book and like, what the fuck are they going to do? Like, when is this? This book is almost over. There's not enough room to fix this. So
I'm assuming it's an easy fix.
Yeah. He says that she should have people madly in love with her, and she says that she used to want a love story like her parents, where they, like, met in a coffee shop, love at first sight, they knew immediately. And he's just like, well, you still can, but she's just like, no, this isn't a fairy tale, like, I don't believe in that, like, possibility anymore. And she's like, when she says this isn't a fairy tale, she's like, I know we're a prince and a princess, but this is our jobs. It's just kind of funny. And she says she knows that Easter has problems, but she doesn't know how to fix them. So exactly like him. And he just says he doesn't think it's like this in all of the holidays. So maybe it doesn't need to be like this in theirs either.
Oh.
And that is where we end this week.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I like that there's a lot more about his growth.
Yeah. For like such a short fluff book, there's a lot of growth in the character.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that wraps it up for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com or on Instagram or Facebook at coffeeandcoread and coffee.coread on TikTok.
So, next week we will be reading chapters 12 to 16 of The Nightmare Before Kissmass. So, make sure to follow along, and if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on the next page.